Yo, what's poppin', Low Gang? It's still raining in case you saw my last second channel upload. Assuming I upload them in the order that I'm actually making them. So, a while ago, my friend sent me a funny meme on Discord. A meme. It was a screenshot of this manga on a certain website that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say on YouTube. It's a very legal website. But anyway, the screenshot was of a manga called I Want to Punch Women. Now, if you don't know what I Want to Punch Women is about from the title, let me regale you with this manga's premise. It is about a guy who wants to punch women. Yeah. And upon seeing this manga, I was intrigued, my eyebrows raised. I was like, surely this is not a real manga. But it is in fact real. It is in fact a story that you can consume 11 chapters of right now if you so desire. It is a doujin released, I think it says on the website publication 2017, so I assume that's when the last chapter came out, and ever since then it's been on hiatus because the author of the doujin didn't feel motivated to continue it. The uploader of the scanlations posted that they said as a note in regards to the manga that they really like Splatoon 2 and some other games. So the uploader says, I blame modern gaming for this manga not continuing. As of right now, I have read all 11 chapters that presumably will ever be out of I Want to Punch Women, and at first I wanted to make an April Fool's video for the main channel discussing it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was no conceivable way that I could justify shitting out like some random shitterton video that I made in a day for April Fool's about I Want to Punch Women. You know, I'm off the cuff of a fairly well-argued, well-edited video about Onimai, and, having my channel quadruple, essentially, in subscriber count. And I'm literally in the process of making an absurdly long, well-researched video about something that I will not spoil so that nobody steals the topic, because I want to be the first one to get to it. It's going to be real fun. Trust me, you're going to love this video. And I was like, there's no way I can justify putting this on the main channel. I did write a script for it. It's in rough draft, and I have it on my computer screen right now, so I've pretty much gotten to the heart of the matter of what I wanted to say in this video on a text doc already, and I could theoretically just read it out, although it's severely unpolished, but I decided it's a second channel video. I'm gonna go off the cuff, say what's on my mind, say it live, unpolished, uncut, rough around the edges. You get to see me rant about the series in real time. You should feel honored. So, I Want to Punch Women starts off this first chapter. It starts off appropriately. The first time I felt that impulse was when I was 12 years old. I want to punch women. That is the first page of the manga. We're already getting to the heart of the matter. He then proceeds to punch the shit out of his female classmate as he says, I was born for the sake of punching women. And all I could think at this point in time was, bro, same. Me too, bro. Me too. He says, a few panels later, I thought I knew the reason why I was born. However, it was something that this world does not accept. He was born for punching women. And then there's this amazing panel. I may or may not show it on screen. It's the best reaction image that I think I have ever seen for anything. And it's of this poorly drawn face of the main character saying, then what was I born for? Then what was I born for? That hurt. So if this guy can't punch women, he does not know what to do with his life. Needless to say, great reaction image, will use. It's on par with the girl crying about being heterosexual. The manga continues. From this point, we learn about the fact that the main character has a grind set. He's working out at the, lifting weights, pumping iron, doing all the exercises, training for the day that he gets to punch another woman. But he must resist the urges. He gets the urges whenever he's talking to his classmates. He's isolated himself because of this. And we get the sense that he punches women because he finds them attractive. Some wire has been crossed in his brain to the point where sexual attraction just causes him to be irrationally violent, and that he can't suppress these urges. And that's all in the first chapter. Now, I'm not going to regale you with every single bit of what happens in this story. You just need to read it yourself. But some highlights are, it's essentially supposed to be a drama, and, the guy, he finds this attractive girl named Usa Satsuki. By the way, the main guy's name is Teruhi. And Teruhi, he really finds Satsuki attractive, although he doesn't really know why he wants to punch her so much. But we, the audience, know he finds her attractive. Whenever he gets a boner, he can't help but break bones. So he does this, scheme to punch Usa Satsuki. He breaks into her house, and whenever she opens the door, he punches her. And there's this big wind up. Chapter 3 is pretty much almost entirely dedicated to just the tension build before the punch. He's clearing the wall, going into abnormalcy again. He's been repressing his desires for so long, but he must punch women. Teruhi really does come off as an unhinged maniac, and I don't think it's necessarily intentional. I think you're supposed to identify with him to a certain extent, and I'll get a bit more into this later, but the story is ostensibly about impulse control. It's about, some people irrationally find the desire to, let's say, light fires. And, this is essentially that, but with punching women. And the whole message of the story is that, wanting, having an irrational, violent impulse doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It's acting on that impulse that is the issue. And so by suppressing the impulse and learning to deal with it, you can then reintegrate into society as a normal, functioning person. That is the message that the story intends to tell. But the way it goes about it makes Teruhi first of all, the story is fucking hilarious, but second of all, Teruhi, who, some people do manage to identify with, but he's not really characterized much beyond wanting to punch women. We get the sense that he secludes himself, but it's just all about punching women. Every single aspect of his characterization is just in regards to that. And so it makes it seem like this is all this guy is. He's just the maniac that can't help but punch women. It's very goofy and it makes the story even funnier than it would be otherwise. Every time he punches a woman, oh god. Every time he punches a woman, well, not every time, there's obviously the exception I just mentioned in chapter 3, but most of the time, it comes without warning. It'll be a normal-ish panel, at the end of, I think, chapter 4. He is getting worried about, this Satsuki has caught on to him. She knows that he was the one who punched her, even though he put on this mask, because I think he left his cell phone. And he's, getting scared, and then you flip the page on, and it's just hard custom punching Satsuki in the face again. And when I got to that is the hardest I have laughed in months. I could not contain myself. there's another bit where he finds his childhood friend again, right? So the childhood friend he punched at the beginning of the story, he finds her again. Now, the context to this is that one of his classmates told him, one of his classmates who's clearly trying to become his friend, but he's like, pushing her away because he wants to punch her. She's telling him about this girl who's afraid of men. Due to some trauma in her past. And so Teruhi, originally doesn't want to talk to her or whatever. He's not interested because, he just wants to be on his own. But eventually, through a coincidence, they end up going to the same restaurant, and he meets the girl. Now, the second I figured out that the girl was someone traumatized by men, I put two and two, not to say it's difficult to do so, but I put two and two together and said, that's the girl he punched in kindergarten. Not kindergarten, he was 12. I don't know why I said kindergarten. That's the girl he punched when he was 12 years old. And sure enough, it's true. And Teruhi's classmate, as well as the classmate's friend, proceed to talk at length about the fact that the girl that Teruhi punched when Negu Negu is the nickname Teruhi gave her. They proceed to talk at length about how Negu is traumatized and that she's afraid of men, but that they don't know why, in front of a man who she has clearly not seen in many years. Just at length. Then one of them point blank asks her, hey, why are you traumatized? What happens to make you afraid of men? While a man's there. These people are assholes. If you do that, you are an asshole. Like, straight up. Now, it is explained that they think, the classmate girl thinks that Negu is, traumatized for some inane reason that she, I guess was broken up with, and so she doesn't want to talk to men ever again. That's the one that she posits. But why would you assume that? She's clearly terrified of this foreign man that you've just brought to the table. Without telling her beforehand, and you proceed to ask her what her trauma is. Why would you assume it's something innocent? You suck if you do that. But I digress. So, Teruhi and Negu eventually, the classmate girl, upon hearing that Teruhi and Negu have a past together, although she doesn't know it entails punching her, set them up together to where it's like Teruhi's walking her back home. And they eventually have this legitimately pretty emotional conversation about how Negu and Teruhi, despite their past together, of Teruhi violently assaulting her on a whim because he found her attractive, they nonetheless still want to be friends. What's in the past is in the past. It's been forever. We can treat it as water under the bridge. Maybe he's a changed man. And this scene is legitimately really great. I was really getting, it was kind of hitting me in the feels. We get the flashback of them being friends together and how they came up with their nicknames. It's really cute. And then it hard cuts to Teruhi punching her in the face, and I burst out laughing. I could not believe my eyes. He cannot go, even a few chapters without punching someone in the face, without punching another innocent woman. I could not believe it. I got so invested in this emotional scene, and then he just fucking decks her. What? It's unbelievable. There's another scene where he... oh god, I just remembered this one. So... earlier, I was talking about how he suddenly punches Satsuki in the face. And this is outside his house, mind you, because she's pinned him down where he lives, and he wants to talk, or she wants to talk to him. And he brings her to his bedroom after punching her in the face, because it's okay, I don't want any passers-by seeing this woman on the ground beaten, bloody, and bruised. I don't want to get fucking manhandled by the police. So he takes her to his bedroom. And then, the greatest anime walk-in scene of all time happens. Teruhi's little sister wants to see what all the fuss is about. She hears a commotion in there. So she goes up to the bedroom, walks in, and cannot believe her eyes. There is this girl crying on his bed, bleeding out her nose. Now Teruhi, his little sister is about to get his mom. So he grabs his sister, pins her down to the ground, and says, if you say anything, like call the police, tell my mom, anything like that, I'll smash your face in. I think that's the exact line he says. And I'm flabbergasted. I cannot contain my laughter. It is the hardest I have laughed in ages. This story is hilarious. Now, after a certain point, upon reading this story, of catching up to it continually over time, I was relatively consistent with this story for a while before putting it off, but eventually finishing it today in order to make this video. And there was a point where, excuse me, I burped. I burped again. Bruh. There was a point where I couldn't help but wonder, why is this so funny? And on the surface, it's kind of obvious. It's a guy who wants to punch women. That's kind of inherently ridiculous. Your entire life is just dictated by punching women. But while reading it, there are flashes of, legitimate emotions in there. It's very clearly trying to be a serious story. One of my friends posited that there's no way this could be real. The bro is talking about how, the meaning of life is to punch women. But there are so many scenes that only make sense sincerely. So much of this story is legitimately being framed as if it was emotional. And so much, you have to go, at times, a decent length to get a gut-bustingly hilarious moment. I think that if this were sarcastic, it'd be something more like Nyan Neko Sugar Girls, where it's so clearly scuffed and sarcastic, the art quality wouldn't be nearly this good. This seems too polished and genuine to be a troll. And maybe it is just next level trolling. But I don't think it is. I think this is sincerely trying to be a legitimately emotional narrative. Furthermore, it does, like I said, have themes about impulse control that it does explore. Although the story is forever on hiatus and forever incomplete, presumably forever, it could always come back, but nonetheless has been on hiatus for a while now, there is still, within its short span of chapters, stuff about dealing with impulse control. Satsuki has Teruhi put on MMA gloves so that whenever he punches something, it doesn't hurt his fist as badly. He doesn't need to bandage it. And hopefully, it doesn't hurt the other person as badly. And, she wonders, okay, is there a part of my body that you can punch that won't hurt me? That, you can do to, vent your, fucking impulses? And maybe doing that will cause the impulse to lessen. And he punches her shoulder because, guys do that to each other all the time, She talks about how, she sees her male classmates punch each other on the shoulder. And she's like, yo, maybe you could do that. And then he fucking goes in and punches her 12 times in the shoulder. And I couldn't stop laughing. But I digress. There is nonetheless a message here. And furthermore, for as ridiculous as I do find the characters at times, they are nonetheless attempts at legitimate characterization. Usa Satsuki is supposed to be cold and logical and calculating. She does everything according to her logic, albeit she does put herself in harm's way a lot of the time in a way that is illogical, but even then, the story is aware of it. The story, it treats it as a mystery. The main character monologues about how weird it is that she's so willing to go along with, fucking treating his impulses. And although she provides a logical explanation, it doesn't entirely track, it doesn't seem to entirely justify why she's doing what she's doing, and the main character sort of picks up on that. He's like, there has to be something else here. There we go. That's more mystery around a character than what you would get from some bog standard light novel, like how the realist hero rebuilt the kingdom. There's something here, right? So, I have to ask, why doesn't it work? And to get to that answer, we have to talk about Onani Master Kurosawa. Now, Onani Master Kurosawa, well, I should probably call it by its English title. The Master of Masturbation, Kurosawa-kun. Now, if you don't know what the Master of Masturbation is about, it's about a teenage boy who is the Master of Masturbation. Every day at the end of school, he goes to the women's restroom and he fucking jizzes his brains out, jizzes all over the floor everywhere. And he makes this a daily ritual of his. There's a part where he goes on a break from school and bro does no fap. Bro is suffering out there because he cannot go into the school's women's restroom. He cannot do it. And, bro is going through something mighty intense there. And it's a very goofy story at times. The first chapter is, it doesn't attempt to be emotional or anything. It's a series of misadventures following our main character Kurosawa, and I believe it's 2 different misadventures in the women's restroom. There's one time where 2 characters who will be important later go in for a smoke, and he manages to slip away when they're in the stalls. And the second time, where he walks out of the women's restroom only to be greeted by Kitahara, a very important character who will be very, very relevant here on out. And, it's nothing that obviously the main character is feeling panic, but even then, it does not expect you to feel the panic with him or to feel devastated that he's about to be found out. It's all very lighthearted and fun. I really like the way that Onani Master Kurosawa opens. It lays the groundwork for a few important characters. It's fun. It's the first time through it, you're still getting over the shock of the premise. It's very well done. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that we're not expected to feel sympathy or we're not supposed to feel devastated about the horrible things that are happening to the main character who all we know about is that he masturbates in the women's restroom. No, that is not something we're expected to feel. We then get to the second chapter, which sets up more about his school life. And throughout the next 2 chapters after that, we get to see Kitahara getting bullied, and eventually the main character's breaking point upon seeing her bullied, which eventually causes him to go into action and kick the plot into motion. Essentially. Everything from here on out is a consequence of him deciding to help this bullied girl. And the scene, I would argue that the scene in chapter 4 of Kitahara getting bullied, I believe it's chapter 4, I hope I'm not messing that up, but, it is, at least to me, pretty tense and kind of devastating to see the entire class essentially being goaded into making fun of this girl because, there's a prank that one of them pulls at her expense and, the rest of the class joins in, not maliciously per se, or at least not entirely maliciously, but it's like, sometimes it's fun to see someone just get shit on, right? That's the reasoning behind it, and the main character, Kurosawa, ain't having none of that. And that scene is, I feel things while seeing that scene. I feel bad for Kitahara. I'm not a sociopath. But the point is that that's about something that is very easy to take seriously. People tend to take bullying pretty seriously, right? It's easy to get someone to care about that. It isn't until way later in the story that we're ever supposed to feel legitimately emotional during a masturbation scene. there are times way later on where the main character does come, and it is very sad and heartbreaking that I won't spoil. I know it sounds ridiculous and impossible to believe, but trust me. I feel like I forgot to mention this. Onani Master Kurosawa is one of the greatest stories ever told. It is legitimately a masterpiece, and I think everyone should read it. But I digress. Or I guess I'm not digressing because this is the example. So, the point is, throughout those first few chapters, we get a sense of who Kurosawa is. We learn about his antisocial tendencies with much more depth than how they are expressed in I Want to Punch Women. We see, this very particular guy. I'm unfortunately blanking on his name, but he has an afro. And, he's trying to get the main character, to be one with the nerds, and the main character always finds a way to weasel out of the activities that he's trying to get him to join in on. And, we get to see more of his everyday masturbate in life, get a sense of who he is, what his daily life is, and really put ourselves in his shoes. And, get to know about him. And by the time we've gotten to the really heavy stuff, we completely understand who Kurosawa is and what his emotional deal is. And, when it's about masturbation, because we know who he is and we're invested in him, we're able to take it seriously. There's one scene at the emotional low point of Onani Master Kurosawa that I think is perhaps the most brilliant expression of this story's genius. There is a scene wherein a girl is symbolically in a vision in Kurosawa's head. She essentially is submerged in a literal sea of cum. That happens. And guess what? I was too busy crying to find that funny. That is how good Onani Master Kurosawa is at manipulating the reader's emotions. Like, God, someday I will make the Onani Master Kurosawa video you all deserve, because this manga is a fucking masterpiece. It is an absolute emotional roller coaster. And it got me to feel the emotional lows that I think I Want to Punch Women was attempting to get me to feel. In fact, I will go a step further. I have nothing to support this, but I believe that Onani Master Kurosawa, there's a fairly high likelihood that it was, at the very least, influenced, if not outright inspired by Onani Master Kurosawa. And I say this purely based on the conjecture of the two stories being very, very similar. It's about a main male character who indulges in a habit throughout his life that is, harmful to them in, various ways. Very obviously, in the case of I Want to Punch Women, that straight up assault could get you arrested. And it's about, they both have very absurd premises that are impossible to take seriously at a first glance, but that throughout the course of their story try to tell very emotional, heart-wrenching scenes. The difference is, one made me cry, and the other made me cry laughing. I Want to Punch Women, at its third page, has the main character questioning the meaning of life because he can't punch women, because society is against him punching women. He is utterly distressed, distraught even, at the fact that he cannot punch women. He is questioning what the meaning of life is. Now, Onani Master Kurosawa does not show the main character at this low of an emotional state this early on. Like, not even within the first few chapters, let alone the first 3 pages. And what that does to at least to me, is make it so that it's infinitely more difficult to take Teruhi's emotional struggles serious from that point forward. Now, you may be thinking, well, bro, maybe it's a joke. Onani Master Kurosawa does not always take the main character's emotions seriously. Sometimes Kurosawa will, there's one moment where where he tries to give someone his slippery white justice, a phrase that belongs on a t-shirt. It is hilarious, and the joke is that he's being completely straight-faced about it, but that it's so stupid that you can't possibly take it seriously. There are moments like that in Onani Master Kurosawa, but you're never made to laugh at his depression. When his depression hits in, when he feels suffering, when he hits his emotional lows, you are there with him. You want him to better himself, and you cry when he cries. It is, that's what allows it to be such an emotional roller coaster and to take his emotions as a character seriously. But I Want to Punch Women is not only, making you laugh at the main character's dismay, not even dismay, but outright, depression and self-loathing, but simultaneously is playing it completely straight as far as I can tell. Because although the idea of questioning life because you can't punch women is patently ridiculous, nonetheless, it is a sentiment reiterated by him in Chapter 5. He says to Satsuki, this is my purpose in life. I need to punch women. I have the screenshot right here. What, isn't that the meaning of life? What's so bad about that? Then I shouldn't have been born? He's questioning if he should have been born because he can't punch women. It is trying to take itself seriously. He is crying in that panel. But, it's impossible to take seriously because we've laughed at him crying before, and we've laughed at that same sentiment before. We were shown it in a way that doesn't force us to take an inherently silly scene seriously. And it's not like it would have been impossible to do so. Drowning a girl in a pool of cum is inherently ridiculous, and Onani Master Kurosawa made that work in an emotionally poignant context. That to me is more ridiculous than anything that appears in I Want to Punch Women. At least more potentially ridiculous. But Onani Master Kurosawa makes it work. Another difference between these two stories is that although Kurosawa is a well-fleshed-out and intricate character who you not immediately, but within a few chapters, instantly, if not love, understand why he is the way he is. The main character, Teruhi of I Want to Punch Women, is not quite so well defined. And I think that does partially have to do with the story's overall faster pace. But, most of his characterization, as I said before, is in relation to the fact that he needs to punch women all the time. We get the sense that he is antisocial because he, is trying to suppress his urges, but we don't necessarily get a lot of time spent in his ordinary day-to-day life. It is straight to the I want to punch women, starting a fucking plot to punch a woman. That's most of his character, which makes him come off as, well, the unhinged maniac who wants to do nothing but punch women. It's very goofy and very difficult to take seriously. However, although this story is patently, kind of goofy, nonetheless, it is I find myself endeared to it. I do enjoy the story, and it's not even entirely ironically. The story's ideas are good, and although it doesn't execute on them all the way, it's nonetheless endearing in an odd way, even when it can't execute on them. I'd say I like the story less so ironically and more so in spite of itself, albeit as a comedy in a lot of cases. There are times when I burst out laughing saying I can't with this story, but there are also scenes where, I understand where it's coming from and where I appreciate the sentiment it's trying to tell, and appreciate the story it's meaningfully trying to tell. A story that's all bad would not appeal to so many people on such a deeply personal level. I've seen people say, I've had impulses in relation to stuff like lighting fires before. I don't think anyone specifically related to wanting to punch women, but, people can relate to it on that level. And although I can't, I see why someone would. It's a story that does have an identity, which is more than I can say about fucking isekai. Like, whatever the hell is going on with isekai is infinitely worse than this story. Taking it as a serious drama, probably like a 4 out of 10, but taking it how I want to, as a kinda funny, kinda dramatic at times, that tells a story that has good ideas, but executes them kinda iffily, but that is still nonetheless endearing. I'll give it like an 8 out of 10 maybe. It's very, very endearing in an odd sort of way, albeit some of it is not even begrudging, but not even necessarily insincere, but acknowledging the fact that this story is not accomplishing what it sets out to do in any way. All in all, this was way too serious for an April Fool's video. I am not good at this. Like I said earlier, my next main channel video is going to be something very research heavy. I plan on working on that. Not tomorrow, because I'm going to take the day off tomorrow because it's a Sunday. God, I need to get my schedule in order. I have not been working enough lately. But nonetheless, video coming out, expect it in late April. Sayonara.